Ladies and gentlemen, what a fantastic job Verity James is doing for us tonight. Verity James. And folks, on behalf of my wife, I have to thank Dave Hancorn from Lion. Dave, thank you so much for rigging those earrings for us. Too kind. Too kind. Folks, before I begin my speech, I'd like to pay my respects to the Whadjuk people and their elders, past and present, the traditional landowners. I realise it's a little bit late, but better late than never. The first time I heard the words respiratory failure, in reference to myself at least, it threw me. It wasn't that long ago, just a couple of years really. The respiratory registrar was educating some students and myself, as it were. In my room, it's Charles Gardner on ward G54. He patiently lectured them. See how he's leaning into the arms of the chair. See his barrel chest. See his rapid fire rate of breathing. Adam is in respiratory failure. Over the next few years, my respiratory failure worsened to the point my lungs were so shot I was a guest of the state. That's Charles Gardner, 2 weeks out of every 6. I needed oxygen 24 hours a day. I needed a machine to breathe for me overnight. If I was home, I'd wake up in the morning, hopefully, and I'd delay rising for fear because I knew as soon as I removed the mask and it came off and the ventilator stopped, the anxiety would set in. Without my mask, I needed much more effort to breathe. I'd get anxious, I'd cough uncontrollably, I'd get more anxious, and so on. Eventually, I'd grow tired of dodging the issue and head to the man cave to do physio and nebulizers for about 3 hours. Every morning, 3 hours. And then in the afternoon and the evening, you'd get to do it all again. There's a beautiful simplicity in being faced with death. The volume gets turned down on literally everything else, and you're forced to pull focus. It becomes about survival, about breathing, your wife, your brother, your mother, your family, and your mates. Everything else quite literally fades into insignificance. A more experienced man than myself once told me that preparing for a lung transplant is like getting ready for a marathon, but you don't know when the marathon's going to start. Like a marathon, you conserve your energy whenever and wherever you can, so it's not with shame or pride that I tell you all. I often didn't shower. I didn't leave the house for days on end. I limited contact with family and friends. I was moody, I was struggling, I was the worst I've ever been while working the hardest I ever have. Dying is hard, but I realise now that not dying, or rather the struggle against it, is even more difficult. That daily resistance and repetition for little to no gain, you feel like Sisyphus pushing a rock up and down a hill. On the days I had to venture out for transplant clinic or birthdays or anniversaries, simple acts like getting dressed or into the car with my oxygen required effort on both my part and that of Lexi. Certain activities were simply out of the question, but by the same token, a lot weren't. I could still eat, I could still drink, talk, walk, and I consoled myself with the reality of the circumstance that some people can't. So that was good enough for me. And then we got the call. I woke up after 5 days not remembering what happened. The tube down my throat kicked in every direction. The nightmares were too vivid, the hallucinations too real. Painkillers are no fun when you need them. But I was alive. I'd fallen across the finish line. That was enough. Post-transplant, the physios are much more conservative. They treat you as if you're fragile and precious, as if you've just been through some sort of major cardiothoracic surgery. Weirdos. At first, they were happy for me to complete remedial basic exercises like sitting up or standing, walking with a frame. By the 4th day, I could jog on the spot. By the 14th, I was cycling 4Ks every morning. And by the 21st day, the physios abandoned me, saying I needed them no longer. I was deeply hurt at the breakup, but I managed to recover. By the 28th day, I was discharged and I could almost run. After a couple months after that, I started playing competitive sports, soccer on Tuesdays, basketball on Wednesdays, and in spite of my best efforts, the basketball team actually made it to the grand final. Yeah. In November, Lexi and I were finally able to take the honeymoon we delayed because I was too sick to fly for 2 years. It was my first holiday in about 3 or 4 years, and it was the first where I didn't need medical assistance for in over a decade. It's been a great time, and all those years of hard work have finally started to pay off. Sadly, though, this February everything changed, and I became well enough to return to work. Thanks. It gets worse. It saddens me to say I can even help around the house. Now, this isn't an acceptance speech, but it would be remiss of me not to thank a young man by the name of Daniel Woodley. Daniel made the bold decision to become an organ donor. Without Daniel, myself, a lady and 2 others, and the 509 like him who donated their organs last year may not be here tonight. On that note, in front of all you gorgeous, charming, very generous people, is information regarding organ donation and how to become an organ donor. If you're so inclined, you can fill that form in. It's in front of all of your plates, in amongst the booze. And conversely, you can also head to register.donatelife.gov.au. That's register.donatelife.gov.au. Too many young men and women, far better than me, never made it this far. Not through any fault of their own, but because they had their lives taken from them too early by this unrelenting disease. I urge you, if you can, to not only fill in that form or head to that website and register as an organ donor, but to give generously to this worthy cause. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention.